Okay, yo, did I remove myself?
What did you do?
I don't know. There's a glitch in the matrix, you guys. I don't know what happened.
That was a very pregnant pause.
Guys, if you see Jamar, Mike, and Stone Cold Steve Conley on your video scope, that must mean a couple things. One, it's Wednesday, 8 p.m. EST. Two, you must be swimming in it. And three, you're about to be entertained by three expert cartoonists. Pitch me, I must be dreaming. You ready for it? Let's get going. Well, hello. And welcome back to Pencil to Pencil, your weekly live cast with creative experts in the field of all things. Well, not all things, but a lot of things of the creative stripe, mainly cartooning. We know cartooning runs a whole lot of gamuts. It's Prince Spaghetti Day. How specific?
Anthony! Anthony!
Let's do some intros. I am your first host. My name is JAMAR NICHOLAS, Philadelphia native. Go Birds, Super Bowl champ. And also a proud member in with a board chair on the... What are you laughing at? I'm doing my thing at the National Cartoonist Society. I'm also the Philadelphia chapter chair. I have a series at Scholastic underneath the graphics imprint called Leon the Extraordinary. My newest book, Worst Friends Forever, is in stores now. Go get it. Why don't you? I would be remiss if I did not introduce my co-host, cohort, and co-conspirator. He is the Bill Bixby walking the internet superhighway, looking for people in trouble with a melodic tinkle following behind him. Ladies and gentlemen, he is our good friend, Stone Cold Steve Conley. What's up, Steve Conley?
Gentlemen, so good to see you. That makes me laugh every time. I just hear that forlorn music and just I see credits rolling up the screen and it's so melancholy.
Yeah.
My name is Steve Conley. I write and draw the webcomic The Middle Age. It's your 83rd favorite webcomic. You can find it on our Webtoons, Tapas, Go Comics, and my own website at middleagecomic.com. I also make TTRPG stuff. You play the Dungeons and the Dragons. My latest book, Nibblemancy, just came out.
Yes.
And super happy with it. And the next one shall be announced soon. Once these are in everybody's hands, the next Kickstarter will start. I'll tell everybody about that. But I would be remiss. Oh, and card-carrying member of the NCS.
Yeah, tell him.
I would be remiss if I didn't introduce the Tower of Power, the Man of the Hour, Too Sweet to Be Sour, the cartoonist who walks, who does two daily comic strips, an unheard of quantity of comic strips every single day, Mr. Mike Manley.
Hello, everyone. I am a quantity. That's for sure. I'm a quantity of cartooning. My name is Mike Manley. I am this year over 40-year veteran of comics and animation. And I was told once again this week a few times that I drew your childhood.
I love that. And you said almost every week that you
every week now. That's like, I don't know, I crossed some barrier, and especially I would say not on Facebook, but on Instagram and especially Blue Sky, because now I'm on Blue Sky and I'm getting a different mix of people now on Blue Sky than I get on either Instagram and Facebook. So, and I'm also a member, although not a card-carrying member of the National Cartoonist Society.
Oh, they didn't give you a card?
I have not received a card. That's all being worked out now. I guess there was some kerfluffle. The check cashed, but I don't know.
Well,
I didn't get any little plastic.
Huh. You didn't get any. You didn't get any.
Hold it, officer. Cartoonist here.
Papers, please.
Yeah. Get you out of anything.
I love it. We'll get you all squared away, Mike. But I think it's interesting that we have so many people who are affiliated with the NCS pop up on the show. That it's coincidental in one way, but also just shows you the measure and meter of the guests that we have on this show.
Well, isn't the NCS also trying to grow its membership now? I mean, they have different tiers. So
Yes.
I think if you're under 27, or if
Yep.
you're so they're trying to get younger members, because I mean, it used to really just sort of be an old boys club, like back in the day. It was mostly old guys who were cartoonists, the Chester Goulds and the Sparky Schultz and the Hal Fosters and the people, the Ham Fisher and Rube Goldberg.
That's where the Reuben Award is named after.
Yeah. So it was a pretty much just like old white guys who lived in Connecticut.
And they had
a club.
They had an unusual requirement of you had to make the majority of your income from comics,
Right.
which was just harder to do. At a certain point, it was just became like a lot of people, especially people who are trying to get into this field, they would still be like myself, who was doing web design on the side. It's like, I was doing fine with comics, but it couldn't touch the amount of money I was making from, a web design project, for instance. And so majority of my income, it would only recently would I even say that. And so now the role-playing game stuff is now threatening to make it not the majority anymore. So it's a weird requirement. They've gotten rid of that. I think it's just, I think just having a annual fee at all kind of creates a professional requirement. I think it's at the top professional level, it's like $185 a year. That's kind of steep for a budding cartoonist, but they have lower level, like you were saying, Mike, the 27 and under. Is it just like $27 a year or something?
The 27 club is for cartoonists under the age of 27, and they pay $27 a year.
Yeah, that's great.
You only have so many years you can do that.
Right. It's like staying on your parents' insurance till you're 26, and you can get $27 a year until you're 27.
Well, I'm 26, so I could have gotten away with it for another 12 months.
The Dick Clark of comics, Steve Conley.
And then you need
forever young.
You want 2 slices of bread with your cheese. You got to cough it up.
The chat's kind of spicy in here. I'm not putting half of this stuff on the screen. So guys, I want to get started. We have a really special guest in the green room. Maria Scrivan is joining us tonight, and Maria is kind of like a quadruple threat cartoonist. And speaking of the NCS, we'll talk about the NCS. Maria is a mainstay in the National Cartoonist Society. And Steve Conley, you have an interesting link to Maria as far as the NCS is concerned. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was attending San Diego Comic-Con a couple of years, and I kept checking out the NCS booth. I didn't have much to do at the convention. I think I was there for an Eisner nomination or something like that. Not to brag. But I was there for the awards, but not for much else. And so I was just kind of moseying around, a free-range cartoonist. And one of the things I stopped at was the NCS booth. And I think Maria, one of the perks of being an NCS member is that if you're anywhere near New York or San Diego, and maybe there's other conventions, I'm not sure which ones, but the NCS will have a booth. The National Cartoonist Society will have a booth, and if you're a member, a card-carrying member, Mike, if you're a member of the NCS, they will basically give you let you set up at the booth. Which, if you want to set up at San Diego, that's expensive. But so, I mean, in terms of the price of admission to being an NCS member, the idea of having a spot at the San Diego Comic-Con or the New York Comic-Con, that's worth the price of admission right there. So I stopped by the table and I met Maria, and it was like a wonderful advocate for the NCS, and kindly sponsored. To join the NCS, you get 2 cartoonists who are members to vouch for you, and Maria was kind enough to be one of my vouchers. And so I've known her for a number of years, and I think this is before the first Nat book came out, and I just watched her career just explode, and it's just fantastic to see. And she's such a wonderful cartoonist, so prolific. Just a wonderful cartoonist.
Oh, I love it. So Maria is also a syndicated strip cartoonist, and also a New York Times best-selling author with her Nat Enough series at Scholastic. And we have a lot to talk about tonight now, don't we? So I'm really excited to bring Maria in. Let me get my rendering tools together. Maria, prepare for rendering. Guys, welcome to Pencil to Pencil, Maria Scrivan. Ping! Did I do it? Yes.
All right.
You've been
you.
rendered. Yes.
Fantastic.
Oh,
Hi, everyone.
Hi, it's so great for you to join us, and I'm great. I'm really happy to see you. Steve said before we went live about how wonderful your backdrop is in your studio.
Thank you.
Thank
you for having me here. I'm so excited to be here too. What was that?
It's very much on brand. It fits the design of your books. It's the style of your comic. It's so nice. It's so good.
I just love bright colors everywhere. My clothing, furniture, you name it. So it all lines up. It's like one palette. My whole life has the same palette, so everything matches.
I love it. So it was interesting kind of bringing up the NCS. That might be a big thing we talk about tonight. But also kind of like how we connected is really through being on the circuit, being on the book tour circuit. And I think that's kind of how I ran into you. And then I kind of found out later that you were in the NCS. So like, Maria's here. So I don't necessarily remember where we met, but it must have been at like a book fair or something like that.
I think so. I can't remember either now.
and
I can't remember a lot of things.
We're old souls, so but it's really interesting how a lot of these paths converge, especially when you're kind of at a certain level in cartooning. You know, it's kind of like in a community of itself, like kind of everybody kind of knows everybody at a certain level, and then you go over there and everybody kind of knows everybody over there. So maybe we could just get started with I'm not going to jump all the way to the beginning, but maybe a middle. How did you get involved in the NCS? And then we'll go back a little bit.
So Mike, I think, mentioned a bunch of old guys from Connecticut. I'm a young woman from Connecticut. So I grew up in Connecticut and I live in Fairfield County. So I live in Greenwich now, and I was living in Stamford. And this was at one point the epicenter of this amazing group of cartoonists. And Brian Walker, I'm going to go back a little bit further. I took a cartooning class from Brian when I was just out of college, and that really inspired me. And at that point, he told me about the NCS. So this is probably mid to late 90s. And Brian used to have at the Cobb's Mill Inn some of the most amazing cartoonists speak. And it would be packed room full of people. And I just sort of started showing up. And then life kind of took a turn. I was doing graphic design for a while. And then there was a certain point where in my life where I said, I can't not be a cartoonist anymore. I have to do this. And then I just started focusing more on the NCS and paying attention, showing up, and then ended up joining. My first Rubens was 2012, I think, in Vegas.
Wow.
Or 2011. So, and I was sort of like a late bloomer at that point, but so it was really Brian Walker, and more actually when I lived in Stamford, my running path ran by Studio Lane, where more studio was, house and studio. So I was like literally right around the corner. And it's too bad because unfortunately so many of the amazing, great cartoonists in this area have passed away. So it doesn't have the same connection. And I guess the reason was because where I live here in both Greenwich and Stamford, it's about 45 minutes to an hour commute to the city. So back in the old days when you had to go to New York, it was really nice to be within train distance of the city. But now obviously you can live anywhere. So it was a really vibrant community, which was really great. So that's kind of what got me inspired. And then I think the more I got involved with the NCS, and I was also on the board for a while. I was running the Connecticut chapter also for a while too. It was such an incredible community. And I've made some of my closest friends in my life in the organization, and also was so inspired. And I know that I should say it backwards. I know that I wouldn't have maybe done the things I've done without being inspired by other people. I think like being part of a community and saying, well, that person's my friend and they're writing a book and maybe I can write a book too. And I find this for myself, like when I get involved in organizations, like I have this amazing running group I'm part of, and I'm watching people do like longer distance events and stuff. And I just think, well, maybe I can do that too. And also to have the support of dealing with all facets of the business, from contracts to, you know, it's a solitary business. Like, how do you manage that? I've spent hours and hours on the phone with other cartoonists just drawing, because we're both drawing. We just need to, you know, feel like you're communicating with someone. So yeah, I love it. I mean, it's one of the most amazing things to be part of the NCS.
I love it. That one phone call part you just mentioned made me think of the, I've said this before, the cordless headphone era of talking to cartoonists. Everybody had a headset with the mic on it.
Yeah, now it's just AirPods.
AirPods and Zooming.
Oh yeah, I mean,
yeah, it's almost impossible. I'm like, every phone call starts, wait, let me put on my headphones. That's every phone call starts.
Yeah, our former cohort of ours, Brett Blevins and I have been best friends for over 40 years, and there was only a few times that we actually lived. Actually, one time we actually lived in the same town. So we got used to, over the course of the years, I remember throwing away old MCI phone bills. That's what we would do. We would go on there. I talked to him like 3 hours the other day, which is cheap now, right? Yeah. But in the old days, you know, you're working and he's working, and we would just talk just about every day for a long time while we were working. It was way more expensive in the old days to do that. Funny. Now, I mean, now you can even do it on Messenger. You can talk.
Yeah. I'll call you back after 8 p.m.
Right. Yeah. Right.
I have to take this. It's long distance. What a thing. So you said you after college, what were you studying in college?
I was a fine arts major in college, and the head of the art department did not think cartooning was art. So I wrote him into the 4th book, and he's not here. Otherwise, I'd send him a copy. So in the 4th book, Nat is actually trying to start a cartoonist club, and she has this resistance from this principal. So basically, it's this guy kind of, it's like that influence. And I, funny enough, didn't listen to that. And I'm very grateful for my fine arts background, because all of that translates into cartooning, of course, like, you know, figure drawing and color theory and all of that. But it was the one I knew I wanted to be a cartoonist. I wasn't able to let it go. But there was one project that really stood out. The teacher said, bring an object to class. So I was running out of the room and I grabbed a hammer, ran to class. That's what you're drawing every day for the entire semester. Right. So I drew big hammers. I drew small hammers. I painted giant hammers. I made, you know, I used every medium, pastel, watercolor, paint. And then I started making hammer dioramas with a little foam hammer character. And that just like pushed me deeper in. I've always wanted to be a cartoonist, but like no matter what, I couldn't let it go. So that just kept pushing me deeper into it. So the poor head of the art, it backfired. But yeah, so I've always done it. Even as a kid, I was always drawing. I used to write notes to friends as cartoon characters. Some friends say they still have these. I'd love to see one, because I haven't seen one. I just remember doing it. But it was something that I always wanted to do. And then after graduation, I worked in animation at a small animation studio in town, who actually the owner was best friends with Brian Walker, one of his best friends. And I had taken Brian's class and didn't know this. Back then, there was a little book called like the writer's market, and then there was the cartoonist market. That's how I found the animation studio in the cartoonist market. And I walk in with my portfolio, and a guy who runs it was like, oh, I've heard of you. And I'm like, that's impossible. But he was friends with Brian, and Brian must have mentioned, oh, this girl's in my class and she's really into this and whatever. So I worked there for a little while, and then tripped and fell into the internet, and then started a graphic design business. So I won't go on the whole big tangent, but yeah.
Wow. It's funny because my first delve into art school, that was very much the same. And in commercial art, cartooning was okay. In fine art, it was wrapping islands. And this was in the early 80s. So figuration was just starting to happen. And comics was not cool, right? Unless you were using it as an appropriation, right? And now comics is one of the things that's saving art school, and comics is cool. And there's all these courses on cartooning and I mean, even the place that I graduated from, the PAFA in Philly, when I started, some of my teachers were really old Marvel heads or read Mad Magazine or whatever. But then there were the other people who were like, nah, that's not. And then after 3 years, they decided to add an illustration, bring back the illustration program, which they'd had many, many years ago, back in the 50s. Then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, you know, comics. So it's funny because I think we've outlasted that generation, the old generation of people who just hated comics, except for a few people who liked Nancy or you know, maybe Prince Valiant, but most of those people detested comics unless it was through appropriation, you know, like Roy Lichtenstein, or you're doing pop art, right?
It's interesting that having all of these kind of backgrounds, especially with us graybeards. I'm not speaking for Maria. There's no gray Maria, but coming from these kind of places now where people can't fathom that this stuff wasn't popular then, or it wasn't, you know, like, you know, of the time. You know, I have a million stories about being like hated at art school when I was in school because I wanted to be a cartoonist, and they're like, "Are you kidding?" You know what I mean? So, and how lucky are we for this timeline to be where it is, where we actually have careers?
Well, even in the library, right? The library, there were no. Maybe you had, because of Scholastic, there were a couple like Charlie Brown books, and maybe there might have been one book that had like maybe Pfeiffer's book or something. Right. But now libraries are like lousy with books on comics, graphic novels, and you know,
it's true.
Like, oh yeah, comics are good. Yeah, we like comics.
There's tons of head librarians and deans, and you drew their childhood, Mike.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yep.
So, Maria, so you were kind of location-wise, you were in a really great spot to be.
Cartoon County.
Yeah.
Exactly. Literally Cartoon County.
Yeah. John Cullen Murphy's son put a book out that I bought called Cartoon County.
That's right.
And that was a county that was a bedroom community to New York City.
Yep.
That's wild. And so I would love to kind of talk about when you kind of made the professional leap. Like you just said you were doing a million things that were all professional in their own right. Right. But, you know, I know that you have a really strong history with greeting cards, and then you have your strip and all those kind of things. Did all those things kind of happen at the same time, or did one happen and then the other? Or kind of how did you really jump feet first into being a professional cartoonist?
Well, so I had, like I said, I was in an animation studio. Yeah. And then in that particular studio, work kind of got slow. So I was doing freelance. Next thing I know, I tripped and fell into doing web design at an ad agency very early on, at a point where we were convincing JCPenney that they should put their URL on their printed material, but they didn't, because they didn't think anybody was going to buy anything online.
Sure.
So I did that in an office. So, and I love the movie Office Space, and that was it, except it was an ad agency. So we did like 70-hour weeks, and then everybody wanted to go out drinking after. I was like, I've seen enough of you people. I'm going home. But I did that for just a couple years. And at that point, it was like not a lot of people knew web design or graphic, like that kind of like, I mean, the ad agency I was with developed the ad banner, like not made ad banners, like the concept of the ad banner. So it was a long time ago. So then because so few people were doing it, I had my own, I was like, I'm going to go on my own. And then everybody was doing it, but I had my own graphic design and web design business for many years. And I think it was around 2008 that I got to that point where I thought, I can't not be a cartoonist anymore. I have to do this. I was doing a lot of corporate websites, which it was like, you can only use blue and gray and don't change our logo, you know. And as you can see behind me, I wanted to create things. I wanted color. And also I'm like marketing other people's stuff. I knew I had to make my own stuff. So it was 2008. I self-published a book on Amazon using CreateSpace, which did not work at all. This was long before, so, you know, before you could have a platform, right? I had no platform. You can't make enough margin to sell in stores. I think there's definitely a place for self-publishing now. At that point, and where I was in my career, it didn't really make sense. And there's a reason why I put that 2008 out. So then I start submitting to magazines. And I think it was Parade that bought like 20 cartoons all at once. And at the time, Parade was paying well. I think they were paying $375. Now, then they shrunk down to 150, 75, and then none. And I don't even think they're publishing them. And as the price got smaller, so did the comic itself. Wow. I mean, at one point they were like the size of a postage stamp, so you could barely see it. But that moment was, maybe I can make this work. So I had this sort of list. And as my cartooning client list got bigger, my graphic design list got smaller. So it was kind of a smooth transition. And then I sort of built up this inventory of comics by getting rejected at the New Yorker for 2 years. So I went in every Tuesday and I got to hang out with everybody in the cartoon lounge. And I went to lunch with Sam Gross, and he became such a mentor to me. And I just miss him so much and adore him. And it was so awesome to be surrounded by these people. And I had now an inventory. So the next stage was applying to the syndicates, getting rejected. Then I got, it was actually Hillary Price who invited me to be a guest for Rhymes with Orange. And my local papers here in Greenwich and Stamford said, do you want to put your comic in here 7 days a week? And I said, let me think about, yes. And so I self-syndicated to start with that, and then ended up getting picked up by syndicates. This is becoming probably longer of a story than you wanted.
No, this is great.
And then I also went to I think in 2012, I'd never been to Las Vegas and had gone 3 times in 1 year. Once to a comics convention that the guys who do Tundra Comics put on before, which was really cool. I learned a lot at that. Then I went to the Rubens, and then I went to the licensing show. And that was such a turning point year for me, because it kind of just set me on this trajectory. And now I'm surrounded by other cartoonists and I'm learning from them. And so the comic got syndicated first on Go Comics, then got picked up by Tribune in 2013. And I was already licensing greeting cards, but now I had inventory. So I was purposely chose a panel because I wanted to know that it was close to the format of greeting card size. So that was sort of already by design. And for a while, well, for the entire comic, I was doing both panel and strip form. So I would draw panel and then I would draw strip until one day, Wiley Miller showed me this template where you can draw the whole thing. It's like almost like a cross shape. So I would sort of like extend out the sides, and I do it in one shot, scan it, crop it in 2 different ways. But yeah, I used to make it black and white and color, strip and panel, then digital format. So every comic was saving it out 5 different ways. It would take me pretty much a day to do processing alone. So the reason why I brought up the self-published date, I got the contract for the Nat books in 2018. So if you had said, hey, it's going to happen, you just have to wait a decade, I absolutely would have quit, but I didn't know. So I just flailed along, and I was writing. I came up with all these picture book concepts, all that got rejected. And I realize now it's because I didn't understand story structure. I was not like I had no stakes. I didn't have a clear beginning, middle, and end. Like, I've learned so much now coming up on the just finished up the 6th book, so much about that in the process of making it, but leading up to it, it was like each rejection was like another opportunity to learn more. And it was Sid Field's screenplay book, which really was my favorite and best. Like, I read every book about writing that I could find. That was the thing that, for whatever reason, I finally was like, oh, I get it. And that sort of like having that gave me, I guess when I had the NAT thing, now I had a better sense of story structure. And yeah, so that was sort of the big arc of all of it. So,
well, they say that you learn more from failure than from success.
I believe that. Nobody wants it. You don't want to deal with it, but I totally do. And I also really believe in right timing. There's something incredible about that. Like, I feel like when I look at the big path, stuff that I wanted to happen sooner couldn't have happened at that time. And it seems like there's always a reason why things had to happen a certain way. So and I'm saying this out loud to remind myself when I get down on, oh, why isn't this happening? That I really do believe in that kind of timing.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think what you're describing is really important because it's opportunity, preparation meeting opportunity, right? And part of that preparation is being rejected, right? And but you can learn. You're saying you're learning from these rejections. You're not saying, okay, we all lick our wounds when we, you float your balloon and, they shoot it down, right? I think a lot of people think it's just like, oh, you're so lucky. Oh, you had all these, you went to the right school, or you went to the right bar, or your uncle was the right person, or whatever. But they don't see the trajectory, which is you keep coming back because you really desire to do it enough that you were able to withstand the rejection, even though while you're being rejected, you're still around people who are successful, right? So it's like and networking, because that's the other thing. It's like most cartoonists are nice people and they like to help other people try to do what we do because they remember being in that spot.
Yeah.
Right.
Definitely.
And so it's like all those combinations of things. But I think Wayno, who was our guest last week, also mentioned that format of it sort of like an X, like you said.
Yeah.
Because he showed some of his work where he was showing how he could make it work vertically or horizontally. So.
Yep. Yeah. And I think, back to the NCS, I think that was such a big part of it too, having that support system through all of that. And also, I think what you just said, Mike, about like, it's something like we all have to do this. It's like, I have to do it. And I think I'd be writing, whether these stories got published or not, I'd be writing and drawing them anyway. So it's kind of like, it's something that I have to do. And that's where, like I said, in 2008, I can't not do this anymore. This is what I have to do. So, and I also believe in that when you really commit to something, doors open, that when you really kind of having the intention for it, things happen. And the networking is a big part of it. And I think that's another thing about the NCS is that it's such a solitary profession. Most of us spend a lot of time, at home in our drawing boards. That's why I like to write in coffee shops, because at least there's people around me. I spend a lot of time in the studio, but if I can write somewhere else, I will, just to be around other people. But to have that community of the NCS, whether we get together, at the Rubens or in some of the smaller chapter meetings, is just priceless to be able to interact with other people. And it really is part support group because it's an unusual profession. It's not,
Hello, cave dweller. Hello.
Exactly. It is.
Lonely hobbit. Hello.
What month is it? I've been away.
I know.
There's that meme of like a guy coming out of a cave or something like that. You know, you've seen that meme
Yeah.
of like a snowman or somebody, you know, an abominable snowman coming out of his cave, you know. I'm also interested in what you did with animation, and how you got involved with that.
One thing on the meme that you made me think of during the pandemic, because I actually was on the book deadline for about 2 years before 2020. My first book came out April 7th, 2020, when everybody was washing groceries, and I watched my nationwide tour dates get crossed off. And but around that time, and I said, I'm like, can't I just go to Texas Teen Fest and not shake anybody's hand? Because we didn't know at the time. But there was a meme that had gone around with this, I don't know, it's a character, it's a monkey character. And he kind of has this funny look on his face. But the meme was something about like, when you realize quarantine is your everyday life. Because I think a lot of the cartoonists were like, yeah, whatever. I sit at home all day and have, you know, groceries and what you eat. Yeah, exactly. I was like, yeah, whatever. So animation was funny because it was a long time ago, and I was an in-betweener, and it was hand-drawn animation. So for people who are watching, doesn't know what that is, like if there was a hand and it was going, I drew this and this and this and this and this, and I did the mouth syncs for voices. So I had a sort of like a stamp of each, which is really cool when you do it. I don't know if I remember how to do it because it was a while ago, but you'll never get that soundtrack out of your head. You will listen to the soundtrack 20 million times to get it right. So it was a small animation studio. We did commercials, we did training videos, we did music videos too. So it was it was a sort of short-lived. It was about a year and a half, but it was a studio of 4 of us. And it was really intense and really amazing. It was this incredible bond between the 4 of us, just cranking out incredible amounts of work. So
any notable commercials we might remember?
Oh, I don't think so. I don't know. I mean, I was doing like a Deloitte & Touche training video. I don't remember. The commercial with the voiceover was sort of a Fred Flintstone spoof, and I don't know what the product was at this point because it was so long ago, and all I could think about was what'd you say? Yeah, I could have. Yeah, unfortunately, nothing too notable that I can think of, but yeah.
But you know, experience. That's a great training ground for cartoonists. Is animation. Because then you think about how the characters act, right?
Yeah.
And you have to listen. Because I did the same thing as a storyboard artist. You listen to if you get the track, you listen to the actor, and then you have to act. You have to draw their expression, right? And so you were getting timing sheets from the lead animator, which would tell you how many frames and where how fast the hand moves from here to here. Is it 1 frame or is it 3 frames? So I think that's great. And a lot of guys who worked in comics, especially the older generation, Jack Kirby was an in-betweener on like Popeye and Betty Boop stuff back in the day.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow, I don't think I knew that. we all learned something on Pencil to Pencil, though, don't we? So with all this stuff going on, and also with the NCS being a big part of your life, and I'm still new to the NCS. I still have new car smell on me. I'm still new to it all.
You spray it on every week.
I missed and then I walked through it. One of the things I wanted to touch on real quick was like how special the Rubens are. And one thing that happens a lot with me now being on the board is that people will ask me, well, why should I join? Or what's the big deal? Or what's in it for me? Which is probably one of the biggest kind
of. What do I get out of it, Jamar?
Yeah, like what's my cut? Yeah. And I say a lot that probably the main takeaway is whatever you're going to put in it is what you get back, because that's kind of how life works. But also just being able to go to the Rubens, and it's almost like the time I went to the Rubens, this is probably my 3rd one coming up this year, was kind of like what is it, the Disney magic Like when the first time you go to Disneyland and you're like, this is stupid. And then Goofy hugs you. And then you're like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever. Like, I don't know who would
Get off me, dog.
I don't know who would equate to Goofy in this conversation, but there's something very special about it. And even you talking about Vegas, it's almost like following Pearl Jam. You remember every one of your Rubens, your Reuben weekends.
Well, and that one in particular, I'm sorry, I'm cutting off your thought.
No, I'm just riffing. Go ahead.
That one in particular, because as a kid, I, 10, 11, 12, loved Garfield books. I was a comic strip person, so I would read the Sunday Funnies start to finish, every single comic start to finish, and I was obsessed with Garfield books. And actually, I've got my little Garfield diary where I got stories for the Nat books from my little diary that I kept in 6th grade. So I was a huge Garfield fan at that age. So when I went to Vegas, Jim Davis was speaking there, and my 8-year-old brain exploded. And I always say when I'm school visits that I need a time machine to go back to and I have this goofy, really super goofy picture of myself reading Garfield, that I need a time machine to go back and tell my 10, 11, 12-year-old self, it's going to happen. You're going to have comics and newspaper. You're going to write books. And Jim Davis, who wrote Garfield, is going to blurb your book, which I would have never imagined in a million years. So that was such an amazing, like for me, it was that all of these heroes of mine, having read comic strips my entire life, are like now all gathered in a room and have become friends of mine and are all such incredibly, what Mike said, it's like this incredibly supportive, friendly, helpful group of people. So for me, that's one of the things I would say getting out. I mean, for me, I think the biggest thing is the community. I think, the perks of having a table at Comic-Con is amazing. And part of that is to be surrounded with friends. And I really think that I have made some of my greatest friendships in that group. And just to, like I said before, it's a weird industry. It's a weird profession. So it's this incredible amount of support.
Right. But I can also tell, and I say this all the time, you have the cartooning personality. You have the personality to be successful, because that's also part of it, because there are people who are so inward and they don't have the ability to get out of themselves, right? I didn't think about that when I was younger. People would say, oh, you're talented, you're, the old tropes that they give you. But I think now the most important thing is actually having the personality, because that leads to all the other things. It allows the other things to happen. Because if you don't have that kind of personality, then you don't connect. You don't connect. So you had that personality even young. You had the interest, the hobby, like a lot of people do. But you kept at it, even though you got rejected, that's that line between the professional and the aspiring person who goes right up to that line, and then one too many times they pour the boiling oil down on you, and then that's it. You know what I mean? They don't recover from that.
No, it's true. I think the rejection can be a learning tool, and it also can be not yet, and it also can be the wrong person. And I had this happen to me with greeting cards. I've done hundreds of cards for recycled paper greetings and have sold a huge amount of cards. And when I first submitted to this woman, I can't remember her name, but she said she hated my style, hated it. So big rejection. And it was actually a friend of mine who knew, well, first of all, let me back up. This person, I think her name was Mary. If it was, I'm going to call her Mary. Mary worked in the contracts department. Mary wasn't even an art director, but Mary hated my style. But Mary was like just an unnecessary gatekeeper. So a friend of mine was like, no, contact this person. And that person's like, oh, yes, big yes. So I think rejection can be a lot of different things. And I think what you just said, Mike, the important thing is to not let it be a shutdown. You can't let it be a door slamming. So it's either you need to learn more, you need to try something different. Maybe it's the wrong fit. And I really believe in that too, because I think things that have not worked out were not the right fit for me. And I realized why later. It's always like I have to look at the big span of it to realize why that is. In the moment, I'm crushed. But later I can say, oh, wait, this pushed me. It's like you're going down this little river, and that just like was like a bumper that pushed me off back down the river. It wasn't the right fit. Keep going. All of these things have always worked out. And it's hard in the moment to not get stuck in that feeling of just like, that's it, I quit. But when I look back, I realize that everything that didn't work out in another way, which was so much better than I anticipated. So I guess it's just trust the process, really. And watch the gatekeepers. Sometimes the gatekeeper is the wrong gatekeeper.
Yeah, that's kind of sort of odd. The person that's doing the bookkeeping, going like, "Oh, this is not cartooning." Yeah.
Right.
She's working on some abacus or something,
Yeah, that's why. That's why I should have sent a spreadsheet in or something. It would have been great. But So I think rejection is powerful and can be positive, but it is hard to I guess you get a thicker skin the more you keep going, right? So.
Well, you do have to develop that ability to take the hit, and then, like you said, later on you realize, like, well, maybe that's just not the right person, or that's not the right company. It's not me, it's them. You have enough experience to go, this is not a good fit. But the other thing you mentioned was the licensing show, and our former co-host Brett Blevins has been to that several times in Vegas. And I know the story I remember him telling me is the guy who did Homies, those little, like,
the little figures,
churro, Mexican, they're like little toys, and they're all little characters,
like bubblegum machine.
Yeah.
PVC
He
characters.
sold his thing at the licensing show.
Oh, wow. Cool.
So so Brett's gone a couple times in Vegas.
Oh, that's great.
And most people who do comics and cartooning don't even know that show and don't realize it. King Features has a booth there. All the big companies all the big entertainment companies have a booth there, and they're looking to see what somebody has an idea for some characters like that. Next thing you know, it's in bubblegum machines across America,
Yeah.
So did you start selling anything through people that you met at the licensing show?
No, total bomb, complete and total bomb. Yeah. I didn't have a comic yet. I just went in there and I was like, I wasn't even with, I don't think I was with Go Comics even yet. I just was like, let's go. And it was like kind of like too soon, but I learned a lot and made some great friends that I'm still friends with, my booth neighbors. So I think it might be something that I would look into again now, knowing a lot more about licensing in general and having more content that's available. I would probably do it again, because I think I love the idea of licensing. I actually had a really brief stint of making kids' clothes with characters on it before doing the comic, which was a nightmare, because I was like there was a printmaking studio, and I was like hand silk screening stuff and going to craft fairs and setting things up, and there was inventory, and all that stuff was great because it made me realize I never want to do that again. I do not want to deal with inventory. People are good at that. I am not, and that's fine. So that's where I think that really got me kind of dialed into the idea of licensing. And I had forgotten, I used to walk the stationery show. I walked the stationery show like 6 or 7 times before even getting into greeting cards. And it was in Manhattan. So I would go, and at one point it was like really inexpensive to walk the show. And then they turned around and it was like $600 just to walk. It was like $50. And then that sort of shut a whole bunch of people out. But when it wasn't that expensive, when it was like $50, $75, I went, and it was great because I got to see all the companies, and there were people who were making their own greeting cards, which I also tried. Same thing. I made them, got them produced, and realized once again, I don't want to do inventory. I just want to make stuff. I don't want to be doing all that part. And that's a great thing to do as well. For my own personality, it didn't line up for me. So I think all those kind of missteps led me to the idea that I like the idea of licensing.
Well,
You can make more money when you have the inventory and do all that. I just don't have the mindset for that.
right,
Personally.
right. And I think that's really important, is realizing what your interest is and what your skill set is, because I mean,
Yeah.
Steve does that.
Yeah,
He has an
I know.
inventory,
Steve does
he
it and does it
really-
well.
Yeah, and he's great with the printing, and
Yeah.
some people actually enjoy that part as much as drawing something. They enjoy the whole process of baking your product, so to speak.
Yeah.
And other people
I
like,
wish
no,
I
just
did
want
have that.
to crack the eggs. See ya.
Yep. Yeah, that's what I mean. I realize that about myself, but yeah, you do amazing things with that, Steve. It's incredible. I just I don't have whatever that is to be able to do it, because I couldn't, it would overwhelmed me very quickly. I realized it didn't work for me, but I think and there's so many opportunities now to do that as well, to make your own.
Well, yeah, it's
cut
so
out
much
any metal
like
person.
you were saying what you were doing, like even Steve was doing the web comics in 2000, before the internet blew up the first time, right? It was harder, right? So you were talking about doing banner ads and banner animation and all that stuff. It was like you could go and take a little bit of code. How do they do that? And you would go hack their code to learn how to do stuff, back in the day. And I learned how to do a little bit of that, and I'm not at all a coder, but I learned how to do a little thing. I could make a little GIF animation. I could do a little, because it was simple enough that a guy like me, who is not, the Matrix, could go take pieces of stuff and, make a banner for my website, things like that, and then learn how to put it on the site where I wanted. You can't do that now because everything is so complicated. But
yeah, I was doing action scripting Flash, so that's gone. So
right,
yeah,
right. But it was
iframes.
DIY that you could kind of do.
It's true.
You do that, and now you can't. Now it's just you got to have AI.
Yep.
Before we leave the initial rejection from Mary, Chris Lopez on YouTube asks, "Is Mary now in one of your comics?" If you can say, I mean, knowing her legal background.
Oh, not yet. But thank you. No, not yet, but absolutely, she will be. Yeah. There's a great quote. Gosh, I'm gonna murder it too. Is it Anne Lamott? Oh, I love Anne Lamott, and I feel like it's her. But somebody said, if you didn't want to be in my novel, you should have been nicer to me, or something. I just killed the quote, and I didn't even attribute it right. But I love it, and I do love Anne Lamott if she said that. Bird by Bird is one of my favorite writing books. I think it's great. It's very, cathartic to take any negative experience and put it into a book, which is the whole premise of the NAT series, is my middle grade self, which I got to look at through the lens of humor. But yeah, if someone isn't nice, then you've got a place for them to go in a book or a comic.
Maria, let's talk about your graphic novels for a second. There's so many things that I kind of feel being in this new camp, even though I've been around it for a little bit, but not that long. There's still a lot of people from our different columns of cartooning who are very curious, who it seems like there's no transition, but there are a lot of transitions, or there's a lot of things. There's a lot of, I don't know, secret doors, I guess, that you have to walk through that people are curious about. I just fielded a question from an author this afternoon who was like, "Wait a minute, you charge for school visits?" You know what I mean? It was just I didn't. Wow. Okay, I didn't know. Tell me about your kind of walking through the door of trade publishing. Was that an easy thing for you once you kind of got your book deal? What were you learning about yourself in this new world, and even talking about school visits and putting together presentations and going on the road? Yeah. If you could talk about that for a little bit.
I think it's amazing the amount of hats that we do need to wear, and the amount of skills that we need, and the things we have to learn, because I wasn't so great at editing videos. And so often I'm asked to just make a 10-second video that takes me 4 days to put together. Like, actually, I have a reel for my school visits on my website, and it's a 1-minute reel, and it took me 12 hours to make because I spent 4 hours learning CapCut, which I actually like as far as video editing tools. It seemed like once I figured it out, whatever. And then it took me like 8 hours because I want the timing to be right and all that. So, yeah, putting together presentations. And I think, I kind of did, like, I would look at other people's, like, how do you make a presentation? So I would look up other authors. What are they talking about? What are they doing? So I kind of got ideas from that. I feel like my presentation is refined. I mean, every time I have a new book, I'm refining it, but it's constantly being refined. And also the message, I think the message of the books is becoming clearer as the series goes on. So that is becoming a big part of my talks. And I get so much amazing feedback from parents that the books are really helping their kids. So I'm trying to infuse some of these things into not to lecture kids at all, but just sort of like to kind of make them feel less alone. Because I think that's sort of like the whole thing of the book is to share these stories and that idea of the more personal, the more universal. Another quote that I'm going to kill, but every time I talk about something that I'm sure that I'm the only person dealing with, whatever it is, both in the books and the comic, it's amazing how many other people are like, oh yeah, totally. Especially dog comics, all the quirky things my dog does. People are like, oh my God, that's, whatever, my dog too, whatever. But yeah, I think I had to learn a lot really quickly. And when I first got the book, it was a 2-book deal and I had 1 book. I didn't know about a series yet. I didn't even know that was kind of a thing. So I had NAT ENOUGH. That was it. And it was a 2-book deal. And it was a bidding war, which was pretty amazing because I didn't know that was a thing either. So I was kind of this attitude that I've had my whole life. I'll figure it out. Because I could have been like, oh, I only have 1 book, but somehow like now I have 6. Yeah, it was this kind of this, I'll figure it out. And I really believe the idea of creativity leading to more creativity. And I think that's one thing that the comic, having the daily deadline for 10 years, now I'm doing the comic just 3 days a week. As I'm working on more than 1 series, I'm trying to balance things a little bit more. But having that daily deadline really just sort of, it was like a creative muscle. Like it's like when you do push-ups, like you do more push-ups you do, the more push-ups you get, the more ideas you come up with, the more like there's no, it just keeps this constant stream going. So I think having, and again, what I said before about right timing, having that comic for 10 years was like, there was an overlap there for several years, but it was perfect training for the books, like perfect training of this idea of looking at things through the lens of humor and going back and mining old childhood stories, stuff that was super painful at the time, but now kind of getting to look at it through a different lens. And I know the whole reason I'm writing these books is self-healing, 100%. The fact that they're resonating with other people is truly the icing on the cake. But I needed to write these for me just to sort of work through stuff. And I've learned so much about myself. And Natalie, as a character, has taken on a life of her own. And I just she's like one of my greatest teachers. I've learned so much from this series. And I'm sure I love when people are like, where do you get your ideas? I'm sure you all feel the same way. It's like stuff just comes and on the page and you're like, where did that come from? And I think that's one of my favorite things about the writing and drawing process. It's just like this adventure. Like you don't know what's going to show up.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. I think it's like, I call it like going into the stream. The one great thing about having a comic strip is that you get used to walking like right down into right into the flow, right? Like right into the flow.
Yeah.
When I was doing comic books, you would work and then you'd have that little break and then you sort of warm up and then you get into the stream and then you'd have a break and then you'd warm up and you get into the stream and now it's like always, I can always go like right into the stream. And I think that's a barrier that you pass, which is you putting the brakes on yourself, right? You can put the brakes on yourself. You have some people have a very elaborate process of getting into the music's got to be in the room and you got to have all these other things and all these little routines, which are sort of like avoidance of slowly, putting your toe in, you know, and then your conscious mind goes away and your unconscious allows it. And if you're writing something or you're drawing something, how many times are you willing in the process of doing it to completely just reject that idea and get another idea, which in the beginning, it's like erasing is a bad thing, you know, balling something up after you've worked on it for a day or two or whatever, and say, no, that's not. Mm-hmm. But once you get into that flow, if you reject something, it's just like, well, it's just like clay. You can reshape it. It's not so precious that you can't pedal again, you know, you get stuck in that mud, you know. I think that's a benefit of doing something like a daily comic strip that you don't think about it at the time, because it's also like an endless marathon, right?
It is. Yeah. I think one part, my brain's pinging with all these things I want to add to what you're saying. And one thing I learned in it, what you were talking about, like sort of waiting for the muse and getting everything ready. I had done a workshop years ago with Julia Cameron, who wrote The Artist's Way. So the author herself was teaching the workshop. And one of the biggest valuable things that I got from that was this idea that you're never going to have this giant swath of 8 hours untouched. Like, use the tiny moments. And with the daily comic deadline, I had a sketchbook with me all the time. If I'm waiting for somebody at a coffee shop and they're late, great, I'm working. I would sit on a train, I was working. It's like, even when I'm driving, sometimes I can get in this mode where if I have an idea, I'll talk into the phone and you know, tell Siri to take a note or whatever. And I'll do that sometimes when I'm in the woods, like, so I'm talking to myself. But I think you get used to, when you have the deadline, you have to make it happen no matter what. So you get used to these little pockets of tiny moments. You get into these little, you get to use time. So like doctors' offices, great. They'll make you wait forever. Great. I'll, you know, bring a sketch pad and sketch stuff out and all that. And I think if you try and wait for that big, I mean, life's happening to you the whole time as you have these deadlines. There's stuff going on, you know, there's stuff you have to deal with. So
yeah. I think that's really, so do you have, that's interesting to me. So do you have travel, like jot down little things, or do you like Jarvis prepare the, you know, prepare the comic strip for when I get home? You're telling your phone, you know, what to do. So do you have various sketchbooks around your house, in your purse, in your car, in the kitchen?
Yeah, I have a pad of sticky notes in the kitchen. There's something about washing dishes. I don't know what it is, but I solved so many book problems in the kitchen, washing dishes. I'm like, I don't know what this person should be saying. I go wash dishes, and then I have dialogue. So I have a little sticky note on the kitchen counter. My funny story that I've told a bunch of times with Siri, you know, voice ID has gotten a lot better. It's not perfect. So I have a note once that I found that said claustrophobic tomato. That was not at all what I said. I don't know what I was trying to say. Comic was gone because if I don't write it down, but it was in there, and people are like, you should write a book about that. Great. I know that I have to take notes down. So if something strikes me, I try and keep it. But I do, like, if I know that I have time where I'm just like I said, trains or whatever, I'll bring a sketchbook and work on stuff. So there's no wasted time, you know, and you're never waiting. You're never waiting again, because you could always be drawing.
It's funny that you say that, because the Famous Artist School, which was also from Norwalk, Connecticut.
Oh.
And cartoon. So that's the place that, you know, all the great people like Norman Rockwell and Albert Dorn and all the great classic illustrators, they put together the Famous Artist School. And they had a saying, see, observe, remember. So you're always on. Everyone sees, but artists observe. And then through the process of doing a sketch, you remember something.
Ooh,
and you see, when you draw something, you record it twice.
I love that.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Like you're riding on a train and you see some weird guy or some strange lady, or you see someone with an interesting face. Everybody on that train saw that person with the interesting face. You observe it in a different layer. And if you sketch it, you're like double recording it. You're interpreting it, and you're interpreting what is important to you about that person's, you know, weird hat or big nose or whatever. And that's like gold.
That's probably why I love travel sketching so much. I love just traveling and drawing what I see because I remember things in a way that's so different than photographs. You're just really, you're in that scene. You're just could not possibly be more immersed in that scene. But that's exactly what you're saying. I never thought of those. Yeah, I'm going to put that up big on my drawing, next to my drawing door. I've got a big bulletin board. Yeah, I love that. See, observe, remember. That's great.
I love it. Maria, I wanted to, before we run out of time, because that's what happens here on Pencil to Pencil, the time just like fast forwards. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the book stuff because
I know I went on a tangent. Sorry.
No, it's all good. We're all going to the same. We're all going to the same place. It's all good.
Yeah.
And, some of the really dynamic things that I've been explaining to people over my tenure doing my series is that, you know, again, there are a lot of curious questions of things that just may or may not be at the surface for people. Like one thing is me coming from comic book world and sitting at a comic book convention and tabling and selling a book, you know, kind of, you know, whole hog to a person at a time is a lot different than going into a space and signing 300 books, you know, at a table, and then they just they disappear and go to kids. Well, what I'm getting at is what I think is very interesting is your audience for NAT is not, I mean, there are kids, yes, but if there's ever a moment where you're selling or presenting to people, it's usually families, right? Or parents or something like that. And I've said that at the times that I'm not at a book festival and I'm in a space trying to sell my books. A 9-year-old kid is not walking over to me with a credit card in their hand. Like a family is coming up with a stroller, and then I am kind of like pitching this book to 4 people, like 2 adults and a kid, right? Yeah. So I wondered how that is kind of how you've dealt with that over your time with Nat. Like, has it been a natural thing to just talk to parents, or talk to a kid without their parents, or do your workshops where there's a bunch of parents or educators on the wall just staring down at you?
Oh, that's funny. Well, most of my school visits, it's directly to kids. So it's more of the book festivals. So in where the family, which is exactly that, you know, a whole group of people coming up. And I guess it's sort of the same, you know, I don't think I change what I say to both parents and kids. I think I say the same thing. It's a book based on my childhood self, and it's through the lens of humor. And, you know, Nat is basically trying to get out of her own way. So I think once the conversation starts, I don't think it's that much different how I would speak to kids or parents. But yeah, the school visits is just the kids. And I love school visits so much. And I missed a year and a half of it because of the pandemic. Did a lot of Zoom, which was great. But to be in the room with the kids and feel that energy and draw with them, and they have the most brilliant questions. They really want to know the process. And so many of them love to write and draw, and they have their own stories to tell. And I just feel like it's such an opportunity. And I'm sure you feel the same way when you talk to them. It's like we kind of give them permission to tell their stories too. It's like, wait, that's an option. I can do that, you know, which I think is the most amazing thing.
It really is a superpower. I'll pass it on to you guys.
Kids are honest.
Yeah.
They can also be honest in a brutal way, because adults tend to filter things. You know what I mean? A kid will not necessarily filter something, right? Not that they're trying to be mean or anything, but they haven't developed that adult sense of like, well, you know, I'm gonna kind of
filter, right?
Filter these things. And you're right. All kids are creative, especially I think like below 10 or so. Then you get that critical that critical self where you start becoming frustrated with what you want to make and what you can make. And that's where the artists keep going, because I've taught little kids and I've known a couple kids from when they were, before they were born, and that they would get to right around 10, and then it was like, I can't draw the horse the way I want.
Yeah.
And then they find something else that they can do, and that satisfies them. Like my brother, I was mentioning him last week. My brother Dave was a good cartoonist, but music was very immediate. Cartooning is kind of like baking. So I think he got to that age where he, and I liked music, but I liked drawing more than music. Now I wish I had taken music lessons,
Yeah.
But do you find that the kids have, I don't know, like common stories, like common themes at certain ages, like their characters are doing certain kinds of things? Do they sort of tell you that?
I don't know. I never thought to. Now I need to notice that going forward. I never thought to observe like a common theme, but I agree with what you're saying. There's definitely an age where the self-consciousness comes in. And Linda Berry, who I absolutely adore, so much of her work, when she shows work that she's done with 4-year-olds, it's just incredible because there's no judgment. There's nothing. And that said, I still can't draw the horse the way I want to draw it. But there definitely is like a switch. And people always say, when did you start drawing? And it's like, we all start drawing. We all draw. Like in kindergarten, we are all drawing. Just some of us decided to keep going and some of us didn't.
Last thing I'll say for now about the book stuff and the school visits, and going back to what Mike has been talking about, personality, is something that I have realized that, another one of these hidden doors of being in traditional book publishing is that there is a giant component of you getting in a car or getting on a plane and going to visit places. I don't think everybody understands that going in.
Yeah.
And the cartoonist life is, a lot of us are introverts. And I've run into some cartoonists who were like, talk to a room full of kids. Are you crazy? Like, I'd rather, you know what I mean? It's like, that's the last thing I'd ever want to do. But I think, like you included, are like really, really great at being in front of a group of people and, speaking your truth and inspiring kids. And I wonder, were you kind of ready for that when all the NAT stuff started?
Yeah, I know my brain's going, there's so many things I want to say. So the thing I was saying about right timing in the path, I'm not sure why, but I took an Upright Citizens Brigade. No, I know why. I took an Upright Citizens Brigade improv class before the NAT books, not knowing the NAT books were coming. This was before I knew that they were even happening, because I was terrified of it. I was terrified of getting in front of people, and I was so bad at it. There were all these, I was the oldest person there. Everybody was like in their early 20s and legitimately wanted to be actors and actresses. And they could make cool voices and like get whole personalities. And this one girl was like, it's so cool. You're just yourself all the time. I'm like, that's all I've got. Like, that's all I've got. I can't do what you're doing. I don't know how. But that helped me get out of my own way and not be terrified to get on stage and talk in front of people. Because we laughed too. We laughed hysterically every Friday for like 3 hours, or however long the class was just hilarious. But it made me less afraid. And I remember doing it because I was like, this thought terrifies me. And then we had our end thing and our, whatever. I don't know what it's going to say. Recital. That's not the word.
Recital. Your thesis.
At the end, we all got on stage, whatever it's called. I don't know our final project. Anyway, so that helped me tremendously. But I think without that, I don't know that I would have been ready to get, because it is a whole, and that's what I was saying before about all these hats. So, it's the social media aspect, it's the front facing aspect, the traveling aspect. I love traveling. So I already knew how to pack really light, because when you're on tour, Like I mean, I have one coming up and it's going to be multiple cities where 3 visits a day, get to the airport. The one I did last spring was visits all day, go to the airport after the visits, get there at 9 o'clock at night. I'm sure you know the deal. Get up first thing in the morning. And I'm a runner. I like to exercise stuff. I know that's out the window. Like there's literally, you're going. And part of the daily comic thing, I had this delusion in the beginning. I would do school visits. And when the visits were done, I would draw the comic at night in the hotel room. At 7 o'clock, I am sleeping. I'm out. So that went out the window because I was like, oh, I can totally, And there's this amazing energy. I'm sure you have the same feeling. Like you just put it all out there. So when you're done, like it's like you're like it's all gone. So I'm just wiped, and I have nothing left to. I have no energy. I have nothing. I can't have a coherent conversation after.
Real.
And it's funny because a lot of I did this week long of school visits in North Carolina, and the host was so lovely to drive me everywhere. And we're sort of chit chatting all day, but it was like this incredible extra energy. It just takes a lot to be on and then, converse. I can't fully explain why. I don't know what the reasoning is. I guess because you bring all your energy, you give all your communication is out there. So it was for sure challenging in the beginning. I definitely think that the improv thing helped a lot. And the NCS helped a lot too, because being on the board, sitting in front of everybody and talking to people, getting up, and I've been a presenter or getting up on stage. The first time I presented at the NCS, I was like shaking. I was terrified. And cartoonists are typically very funny. Like, I don't think I'm funny in person. Like, I don't have a lot of people are really good with really quick answers. So I'd always get really nervous about that when I got on stage. It was, it's been a process. And I think each one gets easier, and the more I learn, it gets easier. And especially in the beginning, when I first got the first Nat book, I had never done sequential. Like, I had always done panel. And it was Karen Evans, actually, the president of the NCS, who's amazing, who said to me, because I was so nervous, I'm like, God, what am I going to do? And she's like, you tell a story in every panel. Like, there's a whole story in every single one of those panels. And that sort of made me realize, oh, yeah, right. I'm just sort of stretching those panels out. So, once again,
was there somebody whose work was sort of like a template or a key to help you? Like, what were you reading? Like, it's one thing to read Garfield, but Garfield is not
as a kid.
Right, as a kid, but it's like each one is a unit, right? So it's not like a continuity, right?
Right.
So were there things that you were reading that were continuities?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I was reading. I'm trying to think of the graphic novels. One that always stands out to me is El Defo by C.C. Bell. I just love that. It was such a deeply personal and beautiful story. I love Roz Chast, although it's adult. Can we talk about something more pleasant? I love her work and her sensibility. And that was also sort of just an influence on, I don't know, even page layout and how to handle things. So a lot of different graphic novels and cartoonists, and something I always gravitate towards simplicity. So like Sampé, the French cartoonist, I guess he's got those gorgeous watercolors. So a lot of different influences brought in, but I was reading a lot of sequential art as I was learning more about sequential art.
So did you read like Will Eisner's book or anything like that?
I did, and I have a hard time with it because as a comic strip person, I get overwhelmed by the comic book. I had Scott McCloud's books, which I really like a lot. Those were a huge help. I have the Will Eisner's books, but they didn't resonate with me as much, which I know I shouldn't say, but it's just
no. I always find it interesting because, to me, these things in our industry are sort of held up as like the Bibles, right? The thing that everyone should look at and read and and understand. And I think that someone like Eisner stuff really works, especially if you're trying to tell a Will Eisner type of story.
Right. Yeah, no, it's great. It's amazing and brilliant. Right. And I have several of them, but I think Scott McCloud's understanding comics and making comics helped me a lot.
Mhm.
And
But
Linda Berry's books helped me a lot. Linda Berry's books helped me so much. What it is almost hit me over the head. When I go to bookstores, the books that I need to read find me. And it was almost like that thing was like a magnet into my hand. And that idea of just the whole page and storytelling and just really just like, I feel like she's just got this incredible creative stream of consciousness. And that really resonated with me also.
So when you went from doing a panel and you went from doing a strip to now you're going to do a long form, you have to, you have your, like going up to your roller coaster, then you come down, you have so when you write I suppose you write your treatment, you pitch it to your editor, and then how do you go from taking that? Do you lay out all the pages at one time? Do you lay it out in little chunks? How do you
have
go
a visual. I have it right next to me. I can show. So, so that Sid Field book, the 5 plot point thing that Sid Field talks about. So he's beginning, inciting incident, middle, turning point, end. That is kind of like that structure helps me draw up the outline. And the outline I always say is like a roadmap because it ends up changing. So it's like if we're all going on a road trip, okay, we know we're going to California, but we have no idea what we're going to see on the way. And that is the fun of the writing process. But so here's my little outline with lots of notes. And this is actually an extended. So so I'll do the outline with the 5 plot points. Then I'll sort of go back and give myself sort of an idea of what's kind of going to happen in each chapter. And then I take a big old Staples notebook, which I know I'm going to drop on the floor.
Yeah, there it is.
I build it and I write and sketch out roughs, the whole thing. And I tried to write a script once in the 4th book, and it was a complete nightmare because without my visuals, I thought it'd be easier because I was like, I'll give my editors that, and then we can get through all the heavy lifting, and then I'll go back to sketching. Did not work because they need my sketch, as rough as they are. They need the sketches. They need the body angles, like they need the whole thing, and I do too. So so I realized I can't tell the story. I need to have both. I've always been a creative visual learner and visual communicator. So a script would probably be easier, but I tried it and it made more work for myself for some reason. So that's what I figured out about myself. And I did it on, I hand sketched it out in pencil for the first 3. And then I went to the iPad and was sketching on the iPad, which is fine. But most recently went back to sketching pencil on paper. I feel like I have so much time in front of the screen and in my phone, which I'm trying to work on. I just wanted a part of it to be on paper. And I hand inked and hand watercolored the first 2 and was going to do that. But there was so many, having not done the continuity thing, and like the backpack's the wrong color. So I'm sitting there with the clone tool in Photoshop trying to fix it, making myself completely nuts. So I realized I definitely want to do a graphic novel all in watercolor because I love it so much, but maybe not for this series. It didn't work the way I was doing it. Many people have done it and it's great. For me, I just realized it just made more sense. But yeah, I really, I work on the iPad. I have a Wacom Cintiq, which I can use it. It's essential to my process for cleanup. I tend to draw better. I need to like turn the thing constantly, like actually turn the piece of paper. But no matter what, I realize I feel like there's, for me, more humor comes out with a pencil on paper. Like, even though I'm erasing and it would be easier and faster on the iPad, I'm just so in love with the process of sketching on paper that I've sort of kind of gone back to integrating that in my process. So that's great. I think also one of the things about doing a graphic novel, if you were going to just write the whole thing, if you're a writer, you write and you have in your head what you're, but then, and if you're just the writer and you have an artist, then the artist takes it, like a movie director takes that script and can totally cuts it all up, right? Just hacks it, right? So yeah, I mean, we're sort of still inventing the wheel in some respects, and each person invents the wheel a
a little bit in their own way, it seems like, especially when you're doing graphic novels, right? I think with comic strips, it's much more contained. Everything is much more contained, specifically because you have such finite real estate, right?
Yep.
But with a graphic novel, you could add another 4 pages.
Yeah.
And so I think it's very different if you're just trying to write it and then almost like interpret your writing. Like I'm going to write it all out as prose. Now I'm going to go interpret my writing into a comic rather than sort of writing visually from the beginning.
Yeah, that's exactly how I felt when I was doing it that way. That's it exactly.
Yeah.
And the other thing that's funny, each book I have this amazing efficiency. They're all 235 pages. On like page 230, I get this amazing efficiency that I'm like, oh, I could have done that so I have to carry it to the next project. But yeah. And I've also done that where, there's a lot of pages. So I changed my mind about something like 50 pages in. And then it's like, you got to go back. And every page with a graphic novel, you change something even if it's part of your process, even if you're adding one tiny thing to every page, that's like at least a minute a page. I've done the math too. I have all these crazy, I don't think I have anything, like just sheets of like breakdown sheets of like, okay, here's a deadline, which means I have to do 5 pages a day at this, like I break it. I do this whole math formula to meet deadlines and break things down. And I'll sit there and be like, okay, well, there's 235 pages. I spend 3 minutes per page. That means I've got this many hours of work. It's amazing. Like if you make one tiny edit that has to be affected on every single page, it's an incredible amount of time.
Yeah,
it's
that
really amazing.
Also may also change how you're doing character designs too. It's like, do I really want to draw the applique on this sweater 3,000 times?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. I've done a couple of those where I was like, why did I? Well, Steve's work is so incredibly intricate. The details of the armor. What's the word? Mail. Right?
Yeah.
The chainmail. Yeah.
His costume changed recently just to give my life a bit of a break. Yeah, he's going to be nude for like a chapter.
It's amazing what you do. It's absolutely incredible.
That's so fantastic. This is a great time to check in, Maria. We've been talking for a while. How you feeling?
Good.
All right,
yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, we're gonna start wrapping up, but we have a chamber full of questions. So this is the point in our show where we do what I like to call. Let me find it. Come on. I don't know where it is. Question.
I was gonna say one thing.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike, and I'll chew this up.
About talking to crowds, which is just like a convention. It's the opposite of your daily experience as a cartoonist. So I think the thing that I found helped me was when I started teaching, because you're dealing with new people. And the first week or two, when I first started teaching, I would come home just completely exhausted. I almost couldn't drive home, right? Like you're just pouring. You're like, come here, little chick. I'm going to take my brain and transfer everything that I know at maximum, volume. And then what I learned to do was, through teaching, was to pace myself. That's not, and then maybe that's what you learn through doing the acting, right? Is learning how to pace and react, right? Because when you're acting, you're reacting to the other actor, and you're taking cues from the other actor. And I think that's not a natural thing for a cartoonist to do, right? Because that's not what we're trained to do.
Right.
So what I found that helped me was, as I came up with the thing of like, they're like little ducks. So if you give a little duck like 10 pieces of bread, they will lose them all. They won't even eat one, right? They'll try to get them all and they'll fall away. So I learned to like, I'm just going to give you one piece of bread. one little thing. You eat that, then I can give you another little thing. And some ducks will take 2 pieces of bread. Some ducks will lose every piece of bread you give them. No matter how baby bit you break it down and give it to them, they will still peck at it and it will bounce off somewhere or whatever. So that's what I came to do. So now I think when I speak, I don't have that nervousness because I got used to talking to a class of people and focusing on, you're sort of like focus on, I do, like you're focusing on sections and you can kind of know when people are like, oh, okay, the lecture's going too long, it's going too deep, they're kind of losing, they're losing the breadcrumb, so I think that's really interesting that you're sort of figuring that out, that you actually took that acting thing, because you are an actor when you're drawing your character, right? You have to make your character act. So that seems to me that actually, and at Disney, they gave their animators acting lessons.
That's funny.
They would give them acting because you are drawing, you are Pocahontas when you're drawing Pocahontas, or you're Jiminy Cricket or Pinocchio. So I think there's a lot of sort of crossover between all those things that you can sort of like hack something from one thing and apply it to something else.
That's really cool. Well, I definitely act out expressions. When I'm drawing, I feel like I have to act them out. Don't you think? Do you guys all do that too? Like when you're,
you have a mirror?
like, yeah.
Oh,
sure.
Yeah. And if it's a sad scene, I'm busted up. If it's a happy scene, I'm all smiles for a day. Yeah. 100%.
I love it.
That's really cool.
All right, let's get to these questions. So we're about to enter the lightning round, Maria. So Steve is going to fire off a rapid fire salvo of questions from the chat. Feel free to answer them at your own pace.
Okay.
And then we'll wrap it up. So Steve, you have the floor.
All right. I was going to start off with George Gant on the YouTube with having to turn to the paper. Are you left-handed by chance?
Am I answering this? Each one of these, or are we all doing it? Oh no, okay.
These are all for you.
If they want to, if they want to target one of us, they might. But I think they're all for you.
These are all for you, Maria.
Okay. Okay. All right. Yes. No, I am not left-handed.
All right.
It is. I love it.
That's a lightning.
Next.
Is that the question? What did I miss?
Yeah.
Perfect. That's perfect. Paul Pate on the YouTube. If you could do a different type of graphic novel about anything, what would it be?
I really am interested in doing something not based in reality because Nat is somewhat in reality. She's in middle school. So something where there's no rules or I get to make the rules of what reality is. So yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to.
Fantastic. Kirk's Pencils on the YouTube. With all that drawing, did your fingers ever cramp up like a trigger finger?
No, but I will say this. My hand hurts a lot more drawing on the iPad than with pencil and paper. I don't know if because the pencil doesn't give, but I have a lot more hand pain drawing. I have no hand pain at all using pencil and paper. So that was another thing I realized in the sketching process, why I actually like to use pencil and paper.
I miss the sound of pencil on paper.
I know.
Right? It's like, I don't know how that, Apple's got to add that.
And and sharpening the pencils and all that. Yeah.
Well, you know what I think it is because when you're working on a Cintiq, your hand is moving repetitively in the same area, right? Like literally probably no more than that big, right?
You're right.
Right? When you're drawing, you're using your arm, you're moving your body, your whole body is moving. So that's why all the young people who have been drawing from the beginning of their career are all going to have, like, they're getting carpal tunnel. They have to wear the magic Michael Jackson glove of support, for their, and just because when you draw on a piece of paper, your body's not having to hold rigid, so you can be like right over that sweet spot on your screen.
Yeah, I never thought of that. I have this. I know I'm not supposed to answer that, but I'm going to. I have the. I cannot draw on my iPad without the screen protector, which does sort of emulate the sound, but it's too glossy for me without the paper thing on it. That changed everything for me when I put the screen protector on.
You have the Michael Jackson glove with the finger out. I love it.
All right, we got.
All right, go ahead, Steve.
All right, we got Billy Bob on YouTube. Maria, do you have a favorite character you created when you were little that isn't included in your work?
Yeah. Do I have that little book here? I probably do. My little. Maybe I brought it upstairs. Oh yeah, no. I wrote my first graphic novel in 6th grade of this little pencil.
What?
Won a book contest. I know, I love him. Won a book contest, and that is written about in Nat Enough. The last third of the book is all about Nat going to the Capitol, and there's actually the Connecticut Capitol building where I went. There's a whole thing about that book contest. So yeah, that little character was officially my first graphic novel because it was a book project, and I had to draw it, of course, because that's what happens.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you for that question, Billy Bob. And we got a follow-up, not follow-up, but another one from Billy Bob. Also, do you have a favorite joke or one that really stands out to you that you've written?
Oh, that's hard. Favorite's always hard because there's so many. Anything I do about my dog, any dachshund joke I make about my dog is my favorite because I love my dog so much. So yeah, there's two that, one that you can't tell if he's doing dachshund yoga. So you don't know if he's doing plank. I think you actually used it in the show note thing. You can't tell if he's doing plank lying down. There it is. Yeah, you can't tell if what he's doing, if he's doing upward dog, downward dog, or plank, because yeah. And then there was one with a growth chart because when Toby was a puppy, he was 3 pounds and he never got any bigger. He just got longer. So I did a horizontal growth chart, which is one of my favorite gags.
So he reached his maximum girth and then just
he just kept stretching out. So there's another dachshund with drawing a little chart this way. So
wow, that would have been great if you had done a quick time animation.
I should actually. That would be a fun animation to do. That's a great idea.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Billy Bob. We've got D. Parson on Facebook. From a syndicated strip to graphic novels, what's the one thing that you've learned that applies to both that you're glad you've learned?
Oh, both require an amazing amount of dedication. So it's always, both of the deadlines, it's kind of like when you're even if you don't feel like it, even if you're tired, you sort of get this discipline and the idea of breaking down a big goal into smaller chunks. So even when I was working, I would work months ahead. So I would kind of always have a plan in place. So it definitely helps me to have a plan. So whether it was, making deadline for the syndicated comic and knowing how many comics I needed to have to be several months out, or breaking down the graphic novel project into manageable chunks. And like I was saying before about timing, saying, okay, here's my deadline. I have this many pages due then. How many pages a day do I need to do to meet that deadline kind of thing? So I think the discipline of both are very similar. And it absolutely helped me so much to have the syndicated comic, to have that same discipline for graphic novels.
That's fantastic. And I love also the Jim Davis in Dee's profile pic there. That's fantastic. That's a nice touch to
read Rose.
Oh, that's awesome.
And
yeah, our chat is filthy with cartoonists.
I
love lousy. The libraries are lousy.
It's lousy.
Lousy is such a great word.
We got two more here. We got Trey on YouTube. Did you have any fears toward pursuing this career, and how did you navigate that, or what helped?
Yeah, what's funny about that? I personally didn't have as much fear as everybody else did because I got that whole you need something to fall back on thing. But cartooning was my fallback. Anytime there was an assignment or a creative assignment or something, it was my fallback. So I didn't really have a fear around it until I listened to other people's opinions of it. So similar to, the head of the art department who didn't think cartooning was art, or guidance counselors, I think that whole that whole starving artist thing has to go away. Like I don't believe in that. And that's just an old trope that just needs to not exist anymore.
Which wasn't even really true at the time, if you think about it, because the further back you go, there was more opportunities for cartoonists, right? Because you had the zillions of magazines, and there were a lot of venues. Even if you were kind of sucky, there was a lot of venues that, you know, a fishing magazine or a farm magazine, or you know, those venues don't exist, right? So there was a lot of, but I think that's like the Hollywood thing. Oh, you're going to be the starving artist, right? You're going to be the artist of the garret with your woe is me, you know, eating crusts of bread or whatever, you know.
I don't believe in it.
That's how they get us to accept less. Thank you.
Right. Well, that's a good point. Yeah.
Thank you for that question, Trey. I also just love that you've taken all these workshop classes and all these things like, oh, this is gap in my knowledge. I'm going to go to this workshop or study this. I love that. This isn't really a question, but it's just, I think something we'd all agree with from Marshall on YouTube. Cool guest.
Thank you.
You made the cut, Maria. I love it.
Thank you.
I have another question for you, and this is a pretty boilerplate question: is how do you structure your day, especially when you're spinning a lot of plates? And I'm sure it may be different when you're in between book deadlines. But I'm just wondering, like maybe at your max cap, how are you structuring out your week?
I know it's funny because I always have a hard time with that routine because I feel like I don't necessarily have a routine. And my challenge is I love, I've got this great running group. I love trail running first thing in the morning. I also love writing first thing in the morning. So I it's hard to pick one or the other. And there'll definitely be times on deadline where I'll just like, I also sort of have insomnia, but if I wake up at 4 in the morning, I can either get up at 4:30 and go to my trail run, or I can get up at 4:30 and go to my drawing board. And I sometimes pick different ones, but there's a magical writing time for me super, super early because emails aren't happening, calls aren't happening, texts aren't happening. I really love, there's a magic window. I don't do this every day, but there are moments when I do that. When I'm super in it and inking, it's like 12-hour, like I'm out of bed and inking until as late as I can go. And that's, you know, I think like what you said, it's like different phases of the book are different kind of routines but I do know that exercise is a huge part of my life. And whenever I don't make it a priority, I suffer. And I do a lot of writing when I'm in the writing phase, running or walking in the woods. And I can just wander. And again, talking to Siri, I might get claustrophobic tomato. Usually Siri does a pretty good job. And actually, there's an app I've been playing with. I usually talk into notes so I can copy and paste the notes, but there's, I think the iPhone actually does this now automatically, but there was an app called Transcribe where it would take your voice record and turn it into text, which was kind of cool. So that just like, and that's me like figuring out storylines, that kind of thing. So that's me wandering through the woods, talking to myself. That's actually me writing. So if anybody sees me wandering in the woods talking to myself, I'm actually working. But whatever. I don't care what anybody thinks at this point. The weirdo lady. Yeah, sure. She's writing. Anyway, I don't know my routine. And like I said before, part of the day would be go to the coffee shop. So hopefully get up, ideally go for a trail run and then go to the coffee shop. Sometimes go directly to the coffee shop and spend a couple hours there if I'm in the writing process. I really enjoy that. I definitely get antsy when I'm in that, you know, the mode of being on the computer for hours and hours every day. But for me personally, when I'm at that point of the deadline, like I just go and I need to I just need to get it done. Like I'm sort of full steam ahead, I think.
So and
then I like to go on a trip. What'd you say?
You're a morning person.
I am a morning person. I'm no longer a night person. At one point I was both, which was difficult. It's hard to be early bird and a night owl, but I am because I think I got so used to getting up so early that I'm no longer a night person. I'm absolutely a morning person. And I also love traveling. So I kind of try and figure out the timing that like, I'll just go crazy on a deadline and then take a trip because I just sort of need to reset. And I get so much creative inspiration and just like I have to refill the well kind of thing. I think that was a Julia Cameron thing for Artist Way, old thing that I had picked up from that workshop, this idea of sort of refilling. So I try and time it well that I can go do something else for a while.
So where do you like to go? Where do you like to go to foreign countries and listen to strange people talk or?
Well, I just got back yesterday from Death Valley in California. We went to go wander around the desert and see some cool stuff. And then it turns out it's very close to Area 51. So so you can't get anywhere near Area 51, but there's this awesome cheesy tourist alien store. But yeah, no, I like, I had a great trip to Madeira, hiking trip. I went to Malta. I really love, it's a big world out there. There's a lot to see. So I am drawn to colorful places. I'm definitely drawn to nature. I also love cities and museums, but lately I've been on more of a nature thing. So hiking and being outside. So
Paul Pate just asked, is coffee a part of your life?
Coffee. I love coffee. I love coffee so much that I could just stick my head in those big bins they have in the grocery store of coffee beans. That said, I've given up coffee again for the 20,000th time because it actually makes me tired. It kind of wipes me out and it's not good for me personally. And it's such a battle I have because I love it. I love the whole thing. I love how it smells. I love the ritual. I love everything about it. So yes and no. Like I'm saying that today. Now that we're talking about it, I was so proud of myself. I think it's been a week. I haven't had coffee and I'm tomorrow and be like, oh, I need coffee. But if not coffee, tea.
What are you drinking at the coffee shop?
Tea. Or coffee. Coffee coffee until like last week. Now I'll drink tea. But yeah. It's hard when you give up coffee to be in the coffee shop. What'd you say?
You can't like half and half. You can't like do half calf.
Like decaf? I don't know why I don't like decaf. It's such a simple solution and I don't know. It probably tastes the same, but in my mind I've set it up that it doesn't. I don't know. I don't
caffeine.
I think I could taste the caffeine. Taste the caffeine. So kind of like, now that I'm saying this, like I'm all proud of myself for not drinking coffee for a week. And then I think I got to 3 years at one point. I really and then one day walked in somewhere and that was that.
And like Kramer says, you'll come back to the bean.
Right, exactly. That's what happens.
Well, even just
but I love that whole artistic ritual.
Yes, swearing it off for a while, I'm sure just like dealing with like the withdrawal.
Well,
it's pretty lethal.
Have you ever had a caffeine headache? Oh boy.
Yeah, they're bad.
It's like nothing else. It's like getting kicked in the head. It's horrible. You'd think that'd be a reason, but yeah, it's amazing. It's something about the amount of blood that goes into your brain. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Anyway, yes, I love coffee. I'll just leave it there. That's too long of an answer. I'm sorry.
Drink it now because
what'd you say?
A friend of ours can't drink it now because he can drink the strongest tea, but something about the caffeine in the coffee affects the nerves in his teeth and gives him a toothache, so he can't drink it.
You're kidding.
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah. But I only tried quitting coffee once in the 80s, and that was a very bad mistake. It didn't last.
Yeah.
And I had that caffeine headache, and that was not fun. Yeah.
I wish I could quit. I wish I could quit you.
I know.
There's one more thing in here. Myra Valise. Hey Myra, I haven't seen Myra in a long time. Says had to tune in. Hi Maria. How were you able to build the discipline to become a morning person? It's tough these days.
It is tough, and I have to say this. So I'm in Connecticut, and it's been really a cold winter. So some of these morning runs, especially, it's been like 7, not like single digits, whatever. but the feeling I have when it's all over is amazing. So I think I focus on that to get up early. And I think now that I'm on that pattern, I kind of naturally am exhausted by like 9, like I'm asleep by 10. I'm, usually by 9:30. So I think once I've committed to the morning thing, both either for writing or running, now that's the schedule I'm on. And I'm like, I don't really stay out late anymore, which is, it's kind of funny and sad. And actually there's an event tomorrow night in the city. There's a cartoonist happy hour, NCS thing that I kind of want to go to, but I'll probably be asleep. So would love to go to it. I hope I can make it. Well, I really do love those events.
This is really special that you hung out with us tonight, and I think we're cutting into your bedtime.
No, I'm good. I know that's it. Well, this is the perfect night because I'm on California time because I just got back. So as far as I'm concerned, it's 3 hours. Yeah.
Fantastic.
The other way. So I'll be up till 3 in the morning.
Are we going to see any Death Valley strips from you? Like, do you draw inspiration from your trips?
I got some funny alien stuff at the Area 51 thing. So I'm sure everything ends up creeping into my work. So who knows?
Yeah. All right. Well, Maria, it was fantastic hanging out with you. Thanks for shunting into overtime with us.
This was so fun. I could talk shop forever. I learned so much from all of you. Thank you. Well, I've got my awesome quote: "See, observe, remember." I learned so much. Thank you.
And also, George Gant says tea carries 2/3 of the caffeine as coffee. So
that's true. So I'm not ever really giving up caffeine. It's just a myth.
We can never quit. We can never quit.
No.
Do you drink green tea?
Part of the creative process, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you drink green tea?
Sometimes I usually, but mostly I like just regular, like English breakfast tea, whatever.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
the kind with caffeine.
Some green teas have as much caffeine as coffee.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Some of them do, yeah. They can pack a wallop, yeah.
So before I would be remiss, we say that a lot on the show. I would be remiss, Maria, to let you go without giving you a chance to plug anything. So if you have any, if some NAT plugs you want to do or anything like that.
So I'm very excited because NAT a Chance. Yay.
Yeah.
This is the 6th book in the series. Is coming out on the March 4th, which is 2 weeks.
That's super soon. Yeah.
That's coming up. Yeah, and I'm really excited about this book. This is about Nat, who does not think she's an athlete, and she sort of gets roped into doing a triathlon with her best friend. And I also did not think I was an athlete, and I have this great picture from field day where I'm just about to hit the ground. Like my face is just a foot from the grass, and I put it in all my school presentations. It's actually published in, did I end up here? And it's all about the stories. Oh yeah. I don't know. Can you see this? Yay. That's me.
Wow, you really did it there.
So I was a complete klutz and did not think I was an athlete. Was always getting picked last for gym and just miserable about it. So it was a story I told myself. Yep, I'm not an athlete, and I carried that around for years. And for me, it was when I got in college, some friends sort of wrote me into the rowing team, and that was a brutally difficult 3-season, really intense sport, but kind of fostered this lifelong love of sports, which is still such a big part of my life. So the book is really about the stories. Oh, that's funny. I grabbed French, Nat. That's why it said moi instead of me. This French version. I didn't realize that. I thought, yeah. Oh, yeah.
How organized you are. You can turn around and Doink!
I know. I didn't realize. So anyway, that was why it said moi instead of me. I was like, why is there an O in there? Now I know. Anyway, I'm killing my book pitch, but it's about the stories we tell ourselves about our limitations. So I can't sing, I'm bad at math or whatever. Right. What if we challenge those beliefs? False beliefs. What happens if we challenge these false beliefs that we've told ourselves so many times that they've become our reality? Can we change those thoughts and then change who we are? So that's NAT a Chance. And I'm really excited about that coming out. And it feels like so long ago, as we all know, you do this thing and all of a sudden it's here. I get a box of this thing that I've been working on for so long.
I love it. I love it. And do you have some tour dates lined up?
I do. Yeah. So that week I'm going to be, I know that so far it's Atlanta and Chicago and Austin that week. So that's coming up in 2 weeks.
Awesome.
So I haven't gotten all the details. I think it's going to be mostly school visits. I think it's going to be 3 school visits a day and then a flight kind of thing, which I'm very excited about. And like I said, I'm good at I'm a good traveler. I pack light. I've got like a whole airport set up. Like, I love it. I actually love the whole part of traveling too, like the whole process also.
Yeah,
so.
I love it. Yeah, Dan Santat gave me a lot of tips on how to act.
Did he?
Yeah, for
that's
traveling.
cool. Yeah, he's actually put that stuff online sometimes of how simply he packs, but it's so much better because when you're moving so many times a day, it's just easier to have less stuff. Completely. So that's why I have the same dress in every photo of me online. I guess I need to get a new dress, but I'm like, I really have to. But it's packed really light. Like you could crumple it up practically. You could run it over with a car and it doesn't wrinkle. So like I wear the same thing in every.
I love it. You're like a cartoon character.
Yeah, you
Like
show
a
up at the
cartoon. Yeah,
airport.
thank you. Okay, it was by design. Yeah.
You show up in the airport and you get your clothes in the airport.
Right.
That's awesome.
You get some planters, peanuts, a bottle of water, and these are the clothes I'm going to buy for my tour.
Right. Oh, and I learned from Raina to match the cover of your book cover.
There you go. There you go. All these pro tips. I love it.
I know, and I don't have any blue shirts, so I have to. That's like an off-brand color for me, kind of. Like I'm usually like pinks and yellows and oranges. So yeah, I got to find a blue shirt for a tour. But thank you for reminding me.
That's so cool. All right, Maria, we're gonna cut you loose. We had a super fun time with you tonight. Thank you so much for engaging us. The chat is blowing up with saying how amazing you are, and I'm very excited you spent your evening with us. I would love to have you back on in the future. I'd love to hear how your tour goes.
I'd love it. This was so fun. Thank you guys so much. It was so great to see all of you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you. All right. So we do a thing on our way out of here. I don't know if you want to do it with us, but guys, thanks so much for hanging out with us. We're going to shut this off for the night. We'll be back next week. We have no idea who's going to be on here next week, but whatever we do, it'll be great, and we'll let you know before it is Wednesday at 8 p.m. EST next week. So thank you so much for our guest, Maria Scrivan, who is fantastic, and also my co-host. We are going to go walk our dogs or go to bed, but I would be remiss. All right, this we're going to do, Maria. Start doing this. I would be remiss if we shut this video off before washing our Kirby hands. Let's see some good Kirby hands.
There you go.
It's kind of like,
now you can do your Kirby hands where you're talking to yourself, walking through the woods at 4 o'clock in the morning.
If everybody did think I was nuts in town, no, they definitely will. So,
Thank you guys so much. We'll see you next week.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.